Have you heard about the famous lost tribes of Israel? For centuries, many believed they vanished forever, erased from history like dust in the wind. But what if that isn't the whole truth? New discoveries suggest descendants of these tribes may still be alive today, spread across Ethiopia, India, Nigeria, and even Afghanistan. What once sounded like myth is starting to look surprisingly real. For a long time, historians and even religious leaders dismissed the lost tribes idea as legend. Yet the Bible had already anticipated their reappearance. Prophecies in Ezekiel, Isaiah, and even Revelation speak of a grand regathering, a return of Israel's exiles from the four corners of the earth. When you connect that to what's happening now, the impact is stunning. Peoples like the Beta Israel, the Bene Israel, the Igbo, and even the Lemba have preserved practices and traditions that echo an ancient biblical heritage. Without direct contact with Jerusalem for centuries, they maintain circumcision, dietary laws, and oral histories linking them to Jacob and the tribes. It's like finding pieces of a 1,000-year puzzle scattered worldwide, finally snapping into place. What makes this even more intriguing is modern science. Genetic research has revealed surprising markers in some of these groups, signals of priestly or Israelite lineages. It's as if biology itself is validating what tradition has always claimed. Faith, culture, and science are walking together, shaking our certainties. Are we living in prophetic times? If the lost tribes are truly being rediscovered, what does that mean for humanity's future? For many students of Scripture, this is one of the strongest signs that we're nearing climactic fulfillment of prophecy. And if that's true, brace yourself. What's coming could be even more astonishing than anything you've heard before. The 12 tribes of Israel were born from a promise given to Jacob, also called Israel, each son carrying a share of a legacy destined to endure. Remarkably, Joseph, who could have been just one among 12, saw his inheritance multiplied through his sons Ephraim and Manasseh. That shows how limits can expand under blessing. It's like planting one fruit tree and seeing an orchard spring from it. These tribes weren't merely families, they were living identities shaping a nation's destiny. Each had distinct roles, gifts, and responsibilities. Picture a company where every department has its mission: finance, marketing, logistics. So were the tribes, different, yet essential to the spiritual and social machinery God designed. Remove one piece and the whole falters. What fascinates us is how those family divisions reveal a principle of balance, diversity within unity. In our own lives, we host inner tribes: reason, emotion, faith, discipline. They must cooperate to form an integrated person. When one fails, equilibrium breaks, and the result is confusion or stagnation. From Israel's start, we learn harmony is the fruit of organized diversity. Another powerful detail is Jacob's name changed to Israel before his descendants became a nation. Identity preceded manifestation. How often does a calling, talent, or dream live inside someone before it materializes? Israel's example proves a future vision can be as real as a present that hasn't arrived yet. Destiny often whispers before it roars. This initial formation wasn't just genealogy. It seeded a larger drama of kingdoms, exiles, and dispersions that would mark world history. To grasp how that solid structure began to fracture, we must look just after Solomon's era, when a united kingdom split in two and set the stage for everything that followed. After Solomon's golden age, Israel faced one of a nation's deepest pains: internal division. The once united realm broke into two. In the north, 10 tribes formed the Kingdom of Israel. In the south, Judah and Benjamin formed the Kingdom of Judah. It's striking how our worst collapses often arise not from outside enemies but from fractures within. The split was not only political, it was spiritual. A divided people adopted divergent religious practices and followed kings who strayed from the original path. Like a family that, after disputes, splits into separate homes with opposite lifestyles, the collective always weakens when unity fragments. Different altars lead to different hearts. The division shows that even a mighty legacy can erode through poor choices. Solomon, for all his wisdom, let idolatry creep in, and consequences spread like cracks through a wall. If we tolerate small deviations, in business, character, or faith, those fissures can become canyons. Compromises today can fracture destinies tomorrow. Judah in the south kept closer to the original promises, while the north chased quick fixes, alliances and practices far from the covenant. The lesson is practical. In crisis, return to your roots, don't chase glitzy shortcuts. Anyone who tried to patch a financial hole with an impulsive loan knows easy solutions can dig a deeper pit. This split planted seeds for even more dramatic events, foreign conquests and painful dispersions. Enter a defining moment. the rise of Assyria, which would forever alter the course of the 10 northern tribes and birth the mystery of the lost tribes. In 722 BC, the Assyrian Empire struck the northern kingdom with brutal force. The 10 tribes were defeated and deported, scattered across foreign lands. That moment began the enigma of the lost tribes. Imagine a people torn from home, language, and soil. It's more than relocation. It's an identity break, a fracture of memory and meaning. Assyrians wielded a cruel strategy: conquer, then disperse. They intentionally mixed populations, languages, and cultures so no one could remain cohesive. It's a modern warning: lose your references, family, values, faith, and larger systems shape you for their convenience. That's exactly what happened to Israel's northern tribes. Far from Jerusalem and biblical practices, these tribes gradually absorbed foreign customs. The question echoes still: where did the descendants of Ephraim, Dan, Zebulun, Gad, and the others go? The mystery fuels scholars and seekers alike. Who wouldn't want to find a forgotten branch of their own family tree? Even in dispersion, memory didn't fully die. Some descendants kept traces of ancient practices: circumcision, oral traditions, dietary customs. Like a small flame refusing to go out in a storm, identity can be shaken but not necessarily erased. Remnants are resilient. Sparks survive under the ash. The Assyrian exile opened a wound that bled across centuries. While the north vanished among the nations, the south, Judah, kept resisting through its own trials. That makes the persistence of Judah crucial, because it became the heart that kept the Jewish people's pulse alive. While the northern tribes were carried off and blurred into other cultures, Judah stood firm. Alongside part of Benjamin, they resisted and kept their traditions alive. That's why Jude traces back to Judah. In chaos, there's always a remnant that refuses to bow. Names endure because people endure. Judah became guardian of Israel's spiritual identity. Leaders, prophets, and priests transmitted the commandments, preserved the Torah, and kept the covenant's flame. Think of a family that, even after many losses, guards old photos, recipes, and stories, passing them down. That living memory ties present to promise. This legacy teaches that true strength isn't in numbers but in fidelity. The southern kingdom was smaller in land and population, yet its steadiness sustained the Jewish people to this day. In practical life, you may have little capital or few contacts, but consistency with purpose sustains what crowds can't. Over time, Judah grew so central that the people's identity was tightly linked to it. From Judah came the royal line of David and later Jesus. So Judah's persistence is not just historical, it's prophetic. Present decisions carry future destinies larger than we imagine. Small obediences ripple through centuries. Judah's survival didn't erase the pain of dispersion, but it preserved the hope that one day all tribes would be gathered again. That hope sang through psalms and prophecies, turning our attention to distant peoples like Ethiopia's Beta Israel, who claimed descent from Dan and kept their faith in isolation. Among groups claiming descent from Israel's tribes, Ethiopia's Beta Israel stand out. For centuries, they lived relatively isolated, keeping practices and traditions reminiscent of ancient Judaism. Many claim descent from the tribe of Dan, carrying a preserved legacy with remarkable discipline, an unlikely tree still blooming in a hidden grove. They kept Sabbath, practiced purity rituals, and observed biblical dietary customs. Imagine a people who, without steady contact with Jerusalem, sustained their religious identity anyway. That's like keeping a lamplight alive in a gale, refusing to let darkness win. It's a living testimony of perseverance. For a long time, much of the world scarcely knew they existed. Only in modern times did the State of Israel officially recognize them, opening the door for their return. Thousands were brought by special operations like Operation Moses in the 1980s, an echo of ancient regathering prophecies playing out on airport runways. Their story reminds us that distance and isolation can't erase identity when purpose is strong. Many feel alone in their faith or values. Beta Israel proves solitude can become fertile ground for unique resilience. Those who stand firm in adversity forge legacies that outlive them. Roots deepen under pressure. The Ethiopian example is just one piece of a grand puzzle. If Africa guards descendants who preserve traditions, what about other lands? Turn your eyes to India's west coast, where the Bene Israel kept Sabbath, circumcision, and kashrut in simple homes for centuries, a quiet flame in crowded cities. On India's western coast, a community known as the Bene Israel kept practices that point to Israelite roots. They claimed descent from a lost tribe and preserved customs like circumcision, Sabbath keeping, and biblical dietary laws. Picture them amid Hindu temples and Muslim mosques, maintaining an ancestral flame. That alone is historically remarkable. For centuries, the Bene Israel integrated into Indian society yet never completely lost their identity. It's like wearing two garments, the local culture for daily life and the Israelite tradition for heart and faith. The ability to adapt without dissolving is a powerful lesson. Be in the world without losing your core. They show that even without grand temples or famous priests, faith's essence can survive in the simple things. Many rituals happened at home, in small gatherings where strength came not from numbers but consistency. Like families that never skip Sunday lunch, holding an unbroken thread no season can cut. The Bene Israel often served as cultural bridges, some in the British Army, others in urban professions, yet they bore a spiritual legacy. Identity didn't limit their reach, it fueled it. Firm roots enable growth in every direction. Purpose anchors ambition so expansion won't mean erasure. This people are recognized within Jewish history and keep raising questions about how far the lost tribes spread. If India held descendants guarding traditions, what about even harsher landscapes like Afghanistan and Pakistan, where Pashtun tribes show striking hints of ancient ties to Israel? Across Afghanistan's and Pakistan's rugged mountains live the Pashtun, who many scholars believe carry vestiges of Israel's lost tribes. Several clans bear names reminiscent of Israel: Rubeni, Ephraimi, Levani, echoing Reuben, Ephraim, and Levi. It's as if pages of the Bible scattered and survived in improbable valleys. Pashtun life holds intriguing parallels. They circumcise on the 8th day, observe purity customs, and fiercely value hospitality, deeply biblical traits. Imagine entering a Pashtun home as a stranger and being given food, shelter, and honor, much like Abraham welcoming travelers under his tent. Culture can carry scripture's cadence. Their code, Pashtunwali, governs justice, loyalty, and protection of the vulnerable. Granting refuge is sacred. That resonates with biblical patterns, echoes of ancient tribes living not only in rites but in social values. Scriptures can stamp a people's instincts long after texts fade from daily use. Yet Pashtun never called themselves Jews. They preserved independent customs later blended with Islamic influences. The mystery deepens. How much is direct Israelite heritage and how much a historical coincidence? With few written records, space opens for both faith and investigation. Absence of documents is not absence of truth. Whether myth or reality, the Pashtun show the lost tribes may have left tracks in unexpected places. And if signs appear in the east, imagine the impact of finding even stronger markers in Africa's heart, among Nigeria's Igbo who also claim descent from Israel's tribes. In Nigeria, the Igbo have long claimed descent from Israel's tribes, especially Gad and Zebulun. Their customs resemble biblical Judaism: circumcision on the 8th day, aspects of dietary practice, and ceremonies reminiscent of ancient Hebrew rites. In Africa's heart, you can hear Jerusalem's echo in drums and song. The Igbo see themselves as guardians of a legacy that outlived colonization, wars, and cultural pressure. They preserved music, dance, and celebrations rich with biblical symbolism. Watch an Igbo festival, colors, drums, choral call and response, and you'll sense a spirituality that travels time. Culture here is identity. Scholars keep comparing Igbo customs with scripture, and the parallels intrigue. Some point to purification practices and reverence for sacred symbols as vestiges of an Israelite past. It's like an invisible thread linking Lagos to Jerusalem, crossing continents and centuries in a single storyline. What makes them extraordinary is resilience. Civil wars, persecution, and displacement didn't erase who they are. That's a living testament. Faith and spiritual heritage can outlast physical hardship. People survive, meaning survives with them. Identity is stubborn when anchored in hope. If such signs appear in Nigeria, what about elsewhere in Africa? Further south, the Lemba preserve practices and memories pointing to Israel, and in their case, modern science stepped in, adding a new layer to the story and stirring debate worldwide. In southern Africa, the Lemba carry traditions strongly reminiscent of ancient Israelites. They maintain purity customs, dietary practices akin to biblical laws, and deep reverence for sacred symbols. Surrounded by diverse cultures, they chose to remain distinct, difference as devotion, memory as compass. They claim descent from Israelites who migrated centuries ago, preserving oral histories of flight, travel, and faith. In their villages, certain patterns still mirror old Judaism. It's as if Jacob's memory crossed deserts and rivers to settle on African plains. Stories walked when scrolls could not. In the 2000s, a striking detail drew attention. Genetic studies found a priestly Cohen marker among many Lemba men, associated with Israel's ancient priesthood. For many, science felt like a long-awaited confirmation of grandfathers' tales. When the invisible becomes measurable, hope gets a data point. The Lemba also maintain a tradition around an ark carried during migrations. Some hear a faint echo of the Ark of the Covenant. Whether or not that can be proven, the symbolism is profound. A community bearing not just objects but a sense of divine legacy. Belonging becomes portable sanctuary. They demonstrate that dispersed tribes may leave tracks in customs and even in blood. If science hints at Israel's imprint here, how much more do biblical prophecies speak of a full restoration? This is where Ezekiel, Isaiah, and Revelation surge back into view with promises of regathering. Scripture overflows with promises that Israel's dispersed tribes will be gathered again. In Ezekiel 37, the valley of dry bones rises into living people, a symbol of physical and spiritual restoration, uniting Judah and Israel. Watching a dead tree sprout green leaves captures the same astonishment. Isaiah 11 verse 12 reinforces it. God will gather Israel's exiles from the four corners of the earth. A global regathering has stirred both scholars and believers. Imagine distant peoples, Beta Israel, Igbo, Lemba, called toward a shared destiny. It reads like an epic film, but the script is millennia old. In the New Testament, Revelation envisions 144,000 sealed, 12,000 from each tribe, rekindling the expectation that no tribe is forgotten, not even the lost. It's as if God kept an invisible registry, more precise than any human census. Nothing slipped past his plan. Not distance. Not time. These prophecies bring hope and responsibility. If restoration is part of the end times clock, our age might be witnessing visible fulfillments. Consider how isolated peoples like Beta Israel were rescued and airlifted to Israel. Many see that not as coincidence, but as prophecy switching from future tense to present. The announcements aren't just about the past, they point toward humanity's future. If signs have already begun, what still lies ahead? That's the realm of eschatology, the study of last things, where the return of the lost tribes becomes a key signal on the horizon. The return of Israel's lost tribes isn't merely historical, it's eschatological. Many theologians see a fully restored Israel as a prophetic milestone, heralding events that precede the end times. Each recovered tribe feels like a puzzle piece. As the picture completes, the final scene comes into view. In Judaism, this return ties deeply to the coming of the Messiah, Israel united again under covenant. In Christianity, regathering aligns with prophecies preceding Jesus' return. In both frameworks, restoration is not just ethnic identity, it's the divine storyline nearing its climax. History as rehearsal for glory. Some point to Romans 11, all Israel will be saved, as a key. Paul describes Israel's partial hardening as temporary until a larger purpose unfolds. It's as if silence itself is scripted, and even the hidden tribes have roles to play. Delay isn't denial, it's choreography with sacred timing. These implications shape how nations view modern Israel. Supporting communities like Beta Israel or B'nai Israel becomes more than policy. To some, it's prophecy made practical. For many Christians, even 1948's rebirth of the State of Israel fits this spiritual gearing, calendar pages turning in heaven and on earth. All this prompts a question. If the Bible announced restoration and we see signals now, could modern science also corroborate ancient connections? That's where tradition and genetics begin to meet, in surprising, sometimes controversial, always fascinating ways. With genetic advances, new tools emerged to probe the lost tribe's mystery. Studies among the Lemba found a Cohen marker linked to Israel's priestly line. For many, it felt like the Bible speaking with science, oral tradition crossing centuries only to find an echo in DNA. Stories written in cells. That genetic spark fueled interest across other communities, Beta Israel, B'nai Israel, even Pashtun. Results vary and don't always offer final answers, but they open doors for dialogue between faith and science. History once told in scrolls and songs is now etched in molecules, a second archive. Genetics, however, isn't absolute. Interpreting data is complex, especially in populations that mixed over long centuries. Fascinating as they are, findings need caution. A marker can't shoulder an entire historical narrative. Evidence clarifies, it doesn't replace the layered messiness of human journeys. Even with limits, these studies preach a subtle sermon. Nothing planted disappears entirely. Like roots hidden under soil, a people's identity may lie unseen, waiting for the right season to surface. Perhaps descendants of Ephraim, Manasseh, or Dan have been carrying a quiet witness in their cells all along. The scientific search never cancels the value of oral tradition, which preserved memory when parchment tore and archives burned. That leads to the next debate: how far can oral tradition count as evidence when written history goes missing? Many groups claiming Israelite descent lack extensive ancient written records. What they do have is oral tradition, grandparents telling stories of flight, migration, and covenant fidelity. Memory lived not on papyrus but in voices crossing centuries. When books were scarce, hearts became libraries. Oral tradition sparks debate. Some scholars see it as symbolic rather than probative. Others say continuous transmission keeps a people's essence alive. Think of families without photos yet sure of their lineage because elders never stopped telling it. That too is history, just not the archival kind. Across Beta Israel, Lemba, Pashtun, and Igbo, oral accounts point to Israel as origin. Even adapted locally, they keep core elements: tribal names, dietary customs, purity rites. It's like puzzle pieces tucked into separate pockets, waiting to be reassembled. Consistency across distance raises eyebrows and questions. The lack of written proof also creates room for doubt. How do we separate myth from reality? Peoples often reinterpret origins to strengthen identity or seek recognition. That doesn't make tradition worthless, it calls for balance. Faith without critique slips into naivety, critique without faith dries into cynicism. This creative tension matters less than what it inspires. Whole communities seeking their place in Israel's promise. And that's where the modern state of Israel steps in, recognizing and welcoming some groups through pathways of return, blending law, religion, and longing. Since 1948, modern Israel has become not merely geography but a meeting point for communities claiming descent from Israel's tribes. Some groups, like Ethiopia's Beta Israel, gained official recognition and were brought back through historic operations. Prophecy of regathering felt like pixels turning into picture. The process is not simple. Not every claimant is accepted automatically. Some undergo formal conversion or verification rituals before recognition. Tradition, religion, and politics intertwine in a complex braid. Faith points the way, institutions set gates. Hope walks, paperwork follows. Operations like Moses and Solomon rescued thousands of Ethiopian Jews, scenes almost cinematic. Imagine planes filled not with soldiers but with families carrying centuries of memory. It evokes biblical returns, only now with boarding passes instead of caravans. Past scripts, modern staging. Many groups still await recognition. India's Bene Israel and communities like the Igbo continue presenting their case. The quest is hopeful yet challenging, intersecting spiritual identity with social, cultural, and economic questions. Return is not just geographic, it is psychological and spiritual as well. These processes leave a question in the air: how many remain scattered, living traditions quietly waiting to be seen? If official returns started in some places, what about the wider diaspora shaped by forced migration, war, and centuries of intermingling? The Assyrian exile was only the beginning of long dispersions. Over centuries, wars, persecution, and crisis pushed Israel's descendants to the world's edges. Diaspora scattered traditions, languages, and customs like seeds on the wind. Some flourished in far soils, others faded, yet all left traces. Forced migration explains how Israelite practices appear in unlikely regions: India, Ethiopia, Southern Africa. Peoples like Beta Israel, Bene Israel, and Lemba aren't random. Their stories are river lakes formed by ancient floods, destructive at first, yet seeding new life in unexpected basins. These dispersions, though painful, carried prophetic weight. They spread not only people but spiritual values across borders. Imagine someone fleeing with only a book or a song, relics that keep identity's flame alive anywhere. What Israel treasured in scroll and song, others guarded in memory and meal. Diaspora, however, exacted a cost. Many communities assimilated fully, erasing outward traces of origin. It warns how easily essence is lost without deliberate preservation. How many families, for instance, have quietly shelved grandparents' faith and customs for the culture of the moment? So, with tribes scattered, lost, or blended, how can they be gathered again? Here tradition, science, and prophecy intersect, forming a portrait of mystery and hope that continues to challenge historians, inspire believers, and beckon a world hungry for roots. Now that you've walked through the story of Israel's lost tribes, ask yourself, what does this revelation change in your life? Have you lived as someone who values identity and legacy, or have you drifted into the world's dispersion? Those tribes endured by guarding faith and purpose. What have you been guarding? Many believe rediscovering these tribes is a clear sign we're living in prophetic days. But are you prepared for that? Are you reading the signs or just busy with the daily grind? Be honest, perhaps something grand is unfolding right in front of you, and you're on the verge of missing it. If these prophecies are indeed coming to pass, what is your role? Will you be a curious spectator, or someone who chooses to live with awareness, faith, and courage? The decision is yours, but time doesn't wait. As Israel was called back, maybe this is your call to awaken. Let me press you. If you discovered you belong to a millennia-old spiritual heritage, would you change your lifestyle? Would you embrace your identity even if it cost you convenience or applause? That's not a tomorrow question. It's a now question. If this stirred you, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share this video with someone who needs to know. The story of the lost tribes isn't just about the past, it may be pointing straight at your future.